Dr. Ilara Chen checked her medical kit for the third time as the Hippocrates entered Viridian orbit. 15 years of battlefield medicine followed by a decade in emergency trauma had hardened her hands, but not her heart. First contact with the crystalline Viridians represented a chance for humanity to make a better impression than they had with the Arcturians. Final descent in 5 minutes, Captain Reynolds announced over the comms. Remember, these beings have evolved without predators. No sudden movements. Chen nodded, though the military habits ingrained during the neural conflicts were difficult to suppress. Her hand still automatically checked for a sidearm that wasn't there. The diplomatic team assembled in the shuttle bay. 12 humans chosen to represent Earth's finest. Ambassador Tran led the procession with practiced dignity, while Chen hung back, hoping her services wouldn't be needed. First contact was delicate enough without introducing alien medical procedures. The shuttle descended through iridescent clouds toward a city that resembled an expertly cut diamond, all precise angles and refracting light. The spires of crystalline architecture reached impossible heights, glittering in Viridian's twin suns. "It's beautiful," whispered cultural attaché Rodriguez. "No structural supports visible at all." "Their bodies are similar," Chen replied, reviewing her xenobiology briefing. "Crystalline matrices with photosynthetic capabilities and distributed neural networks. They can regenerate damaged segments almost instantly." The landing pad was a perfect hexagon of smooth, milky crystal. As the shuttle doors opened, Shen's eyes struggled to adjust to the prismatic light reflecting off the welcoming committee. 20 Viridians stood in formation, their translucent bodies refracting the sunlight into hypnotic patterns. Each stood approximately 2 meters tall, with geometrically perfect features and limbs that tapered to precision points. High Chancellor Zenith stepped forward, the light passing through their central core, creating rainbows on the platform. "We welcome Earth's representatives to Viridia Prime. May our civilizations grow together in harmony and peace." Ambassador Tran bowed slightly. "The United Earth government extends friendship and gratitude for." A high-pitched resonance interrupted the speech, like crystal under stress. Chen's combat instincts fired before her conscious mind registered danger. The welcoming spire above them, a 50-meter crystal monument, had developed a fracture pattern at its base. "Structural collapse imminent," she shouted, diving toward Ambassador Tran as the spire began to tilt. The shattering sound was deafening. Massive crystal shards rained down on the delegation. Chen watched in amazement as a jagged fragment impaled a Viridian official, only for the being to simply incorporate the shard, their body restructuring around the injury with fluid grace. Humans weren't so fortunate. 3 diplomats lay crushed beneath crystal debris. 2 more had suffered deep lacerations. Ambassador Tran wheezed through a punctured lung, pink froth bubbling from his lips. Chen's battlefield training took over. She slammed an auto-injector of synth-clotting agents into cultural attaché Rodriguez's thigh, using her elbow to apply pressure to a spurting neck wound. With her free hand, she retrieved her tactical knife, performing an emergency cricothyrotomy on Tran, whose face was turning blue. "Stop the violence." Chancellor Zenith's voice resonated with harmonic overtones of distress. "The humans are attacking each other." Chen ignored them, performing chest compressions on Economics Officer Patel. The sound of ribs cracking under her hands caused nearby Viridians to emit high-frequency distress tones. "Security protocol," Zenith commanded. Crystalline structures erupted from the platform, immobilizing Chen mid-compression. "You don't understand," she gasped, struggling against the crystal restraints. "They'll die without intervention." A smaller Viridian pushed through the security formation, facets tilted in what Chen interpreted as concentration. "Wait," the Viridian said, gesturing toward Rodriguez, who was now breathing steadily despite her injuries. "The damaged humans. They're stabilizing." "Impossible," Zenith replied. She was attacking them with primitive tools and physical force. "I'm a doctor," Chen insisted. "These are medical procedures. Please, let me finish or the others will die." The smaller Viridian, whose name badge refracted as Exile, Xenobiological Research, turned to the Chancellor. I believe she's telling the truth. Their healing methods appear violent because their bodies cannot self-repair like ours. Zenith's crystalline features shifted in visible distress. Release her, but record everything. If these truly are healing methods, the thought remained unfinished, too disturbing to articulate. As the crystal restraints receded, Chen returned to saving lives, aware that every desperate, violent-looking technique was being watched by beings who had never conceived that healing could look like combat. 3 days of diplomatic house arrest had left Dr. Chen restless. The human embassy, hastily converted from a Viridian meditation chamber, sparkled with an irritating brilliance as sunlight filtered through the crystalline walls. Outside, protesters had gathered for the second day, their translucent bodies forming a shimmering barrier of righteous indignation. Diplomatic progress report, the wall display announced, Ambassador Tran's face appearing. Despite Chen's emergency tracheotomy, he showed no signs of trauma. Viridian medical technology had finished what her barbaric techniques had started. Any change in our status? Chen asked. Worse, Tran replied. They're broadcasting edited footage of your emergency procedures. Without context, it looks like you're torturing the injured. Chen winced as the display showed her performing chest compressions, the sound of cracking ribs emphasized with artificial resonance. The Viridian caption translated roughly to, Humans attack their fallen with rhythmic crushing techniques. I was saving lives, she muttered. The Viridians have no concept of injury that doesn't heal itself, Tran reminded her. Their bodies automatically incorporate foreign objects or regenerate damaged segments. The concept of medical intervention is completely foreign. Chen ran her fingers through 3 days of unwashed hair. How can such an advanced species not understand basic medicine? They never needed it. Tran shrugged. You're restricted to quarters until further notice. The diplomatic team is trying to explain, but their language doesn't even have words for our medical concepts. After Tran signed off, Chen paced the small chamber, reviewing xenobiological data on her tablet. The Viridian's crystalline physiology was fascinating. Photosynthetic, self-repairing, with distributed neural networks rather than centralized organs. A paradise of biological efficiency. Past midnight, a strange harmonic resonance woke Chen from restless sleep. A section of crystalline wall vibrated, then dissolved inward, revealing a slender Viridian figure. Chen reached for her medkit defensively. Please, the figure whispered, light refracting through their form in patterns Chen recognized as distress. I mean no harm. Recognition dawned. You're the scientist. Exile. Right. The Viridian's facets rearranged in what Chen had begun to interpret as a nod. Senior Xenobiologist, Crystalline Science Academy. I studied your species for 7 orbital cycles. You're trespassing in a diplomatic quarantine zone, Chen pointed out, and risking exhalation. Guile agreed, extending a crystalline appendage. Portions near the tip were cloudy, lacking the brilliant clarity of the rest of their form. But we're running out of time. Chen leaned closer, medical curiosity overriding caution. What's wrong with your arm? We called it the dulling. It began in the outer colonies 5 cycles ago. Exile's harmonics dropped to a near whisper. It spreads through the population, corrupting our crystalline matrix. The affected areas lose regenerative capabilities, becoming brittle until... Until what? Exile projected a small hologram from their central core. It showed an elderly Viridian seated in meditation. Without warning, the being's extremities began to turn cloudy, then opaque, then crumble to dust. The disintegration spread inward until nothing remained but a pile of crystalline ash. Great stars, Chen breathed. Our elders are fragmenting daily, Exile said. The High Council denies the severity, claiming it's a natural end-of-life process, but it's affecting younger generations now. Our healing chambers accelerate the deterioration instead of reversing it. Chen's medical mind raced. The symptoms resemble radiation damage, cellular degradation at the atomic level. Precisely. Exil's facets brightened. Your mining scans detected it. Your regeneration chambers use radiation for power. Chen frowned. They're not. She stopped, understanding. You mean our medical equipment. I've accessed restricted knowledge about human medical history. Kyle continued, lowering their voice further. Your species has fought radiation sickness for centuries. Fought. Chen mused on the word choice. Yes, we've developed treatments to combat radiation damage. Combat. Exile's form shimmered with excitement. This aggressive approach to healing, it's what we need. I want to learn your combat medicine techniques. If we're caught. Crystalline Council punishment for importing violent concepts. Permanent exile. That stated flatly. For humans. Diplomatic expulsion and trade embargo. And if we do nothing. Title's form dimmed. I've run the projections. Total Viridian extinction within 3 generations. Chen reached a decision, extending her hand. Then we have no choice. I'll teach you everything I know about combat medicine. As their hands met, warm flesh against cool crystal, both knew they had crossed a line that would forever change 2 species. The abandoned crystal mine amplified every sound, forcing Chen and her students to communicate in hushed tones. 500 meters beneath the capital city, the cavern's natural formations created an acoustic nightmare, perfect for avoiding detection, terrible for teaching. Scattered portable lights cast prismatic shadows across the makeshift medical classroom. Today we learn basic surgical principles. Chen whispered to the 7 Viridians seated on crystalline outcroppings. Each bore the telltale cloudy patches of early-stage dulling. First concept. Sometimes we must damage tissue to heal it. The statement caused an immediate harmonic reaction, the Viridian equivalent of a gasp. 2 students' facets reorganized in distress patterns. Barbaric, one murmured, the crystal formations of their face shimmering with disgust. Fasil stepped forward, their authority as senior xenobiologist keeping the group from dispersing. Remember why we're here. Our regeneration chambers fail us. The dulling spreads. Traditional methods only accelerate our fragmentation. Chen unrolled a portable surgical kit on a flat crystal surface. Viridian hands evolved for precision energy manipulation, not physical intervention. She demonstrated with her own 5 fingers. Human hands evolved for tool use, for physically altering our environment, and, when necessary, bodies. The students watched with horrified fascination as Chen demonstrated suturing techniques on a synthetic practice pad. When she produced a laser scalpel, 2 students immediately stood, their crystalline forms vibrating with cultural revulsion. I cannot participate in violence, even to heal, one declared, hastily exiting through the narrow tunnel. This violates our most sacred principles, the other agreed, following closely behind. Chen sighed, watching them go. 5 students remained, those with more advanced dulling symptoms, those with more to lose. Their reluctance is understandable, Exile said quietly. For millennia, our species has defined itself by nonviolence and natural regeneration. What you teach contradicts our fundamental identity. Evolution didn't prepare you for this, Chen replied, adjusting the scalpel settings. You evolved without predators, without the need to physically fight disease or repair traumatic injury. But now you face a predator, radiation damage at the cellular level. The remaining students leaned closer as Chen demonstrated an incision on the practice material. Their crystalline hands, with elongated geometric digits, struggled to replicate the movements. The precision that made them master energy manipulators worked against them when handling physical tools. Your bodies automatically incorporate foreign objects, Chen noted. That's why conventional surgery would fail. Your tissues would simply integrate the scalpel. We've modified these tools with frequency modulators, Exile explained to the others. They vibrate at a pattern that disrupts our natural integration response. As Chen demonstrated a biopsy technique on a medical dummy, The students' harmonic tones escalated in distress. The concept of extracting tissue samples seemed fundamentally obscene to their sensibilities. This is merely academic without a real subject, one student observed. Facets reorganizing in what Chen had learned was their skeptical configuration. Exile stepped forward, extending an arm marked with advanced dulling patches. "Use me," they said simply. "Our people fragment daily while we debate ethics. I would rather suffer under the human knife than dissolve into nothing." A harmonic silence fell over the cavern. Chen hesitated, the scalpel suddenly heavy in her hand. "The procedure carries risks," she warned. "Your body has never experienced this kind of intervention. And your species had no experience with spaceflight before attempting it." Exile countered. "Progress requires first attempts." Chen nodded, applying a localized field disruptor to prevent Exile's natural regeneration from interfering with the biopsy. As she prepared to make the first incision in Viridian history, a distant crystal chime echoed through the mine. The warning signal. Security Minister Apex is conducting sweep patterns in this sector, their lookout called from the tunnel entrance. Possible surveillance crystals activated. "We have minutes at most," Chen said, looking at the prepared surgical site. "Do we proceed or abort?" Kyle's facets hardened in determination. "Cut, Doctor. The future of our species depends on it." The dulling had reached epidemic proportions. Public healing chambers throughout the capital stood empty, quarantined with pulsing warning lights after evidence showed they accelerated the condition. Fear spread faster than the disease itself, leaving the crystal spires of the city eerily quiet as Viridians retreated into isolation. Chen studied the results from Xile's biopsy for the 20th time. The examination had nearly cost them everything. They'd escaped the security sweep by minutes, but the findings were revolutionary. "The radiation disrupts your crystalline replication at the molecular level," she explained to Exile and the 3 remaining students in their new hideout, a maintenance substation beneath the diplomatic quarter. "Your healing chambers use the same frequency spectrum, unknowingly amplifying the damage." "How do we combat this?" asked Prism, the youngest student, whose legs showed advanced dulling. "In humans, we use targeted cellular regeneration therapies and selective replacement of damaged tissue," Chen replied. "For Viridians, we'll need to physically remove affected crystal structures and graft healthy donor crystal to provide templates for proper regeneration." The students' harmonic tones revealed their distress at the concept. "You want to fracture us apart and rebuild us. Like construction projects." Facet, the medical researcher, vibrated with horror. "Like healing," Chen corrected. "Different method, same goal." The emergency comm unit chimed. Ambassador Tran's private channel. His face appeared, unusually grim. "Dr. Chen, your presence is requested at the Crystalline High Council." "Immediately." "Have we been discovered?" she asked quietly. Tran shook his head. "Worse, High Chancellor Zenith's child, Lumina, is showing signs of the dulling. Central core deterioration, the worst case they've seen. They're desperate." Kyle's facets reorganized in shock. The Chancellor was the strongest voice against human medical intervention. "Desperation changes perspective," Chen said, gathering her modified medical kit. She turned to Exile. "I need a diplomatic cover story. They won't openly request human medical help." Exile thought for a moment, facets shifting rapidly. "Cultural exchange demonstration. We'll frame human medical techniques as alternative Viridian healing rituals from extinct subspecies. I'll translate your terms into acceptable Viridian concepts." "Clever," Chen nodded. "Ambassador, arrange it." 2 hours later, Chen and Tidal stood before the Crystalline High Council, whose members' normally perfect geometric forms showed subtle signs of stress fracturing. Chancellor Zenith occupied the central position, their once brilliant form noticeably dimmed. "We have authorized a cultural exchange demonstration," Zenith announced formally, though their harmonic undertones betrayed anxiety. "Purely for anthropological documentation." Exile stepped forward with practiced deference. The human doctor will demonstrate ancient healing resonances practiced by extinct Viridian polar crystallines. Chen began her presentation, carefully reframing medical terminology with Exile's coaching. Surgical incisions became guided regeneration pathways. Anesthesia was described as temporary conscious suspension. Grafting was reintroduced as harmonic crystal integration. The council watched with growing interest as Chen demonstrated these techniques on synthetic models. When she requested volunteers with minor dulling symptoms, 3 junior counselors cautiously stepped forward. Under the pretense of cultural ritual, Chen performed modified human procedures on the affected areas. The results were immediate, clear crystal replacing dulled sections as her targeted interventions allowed proper regeneration patterns to reestablish. Word spread quickly. More counselors requested the traditional ritual, each successful treatment building credibility. After hours of work, Chen was exhausted but triumphant, until Chancellor Zenith approached privately as the chamber emptied. "A word, Doctor." The Chancellor led them to a secluded crystalline alcove where privacy fields hummed. "These rituals, they are human medical procedures, aren't they?" Chen hesitated, catching Exile's subtle warning gesture. "They are adapted for Viridian physiology," she answered carefully. "I suspected as much." Zenith's facets shifted in what Chen now recognized as resignation. "Follow me." No officials, no records. They traveled via private transport tube to the Chancellor's residence, a breathtaking crystal palace that would normally have fascinated Chen. Instead, her attention was drawn to the small form lying on a meditation platform in the central chamber. Lumina couldn't have been more than the Viridian equivalent of 8 Earth years. Their once brilliant crystalline body was now mostly clouded, with fracture lines spreading from the central core, the Viridian equivalent of a heart and brain combined. "Our finest healers declare Lumina beyond saving," Zenith said, voice cracking with harmonic distortion that transcended species barriers, parental anguish in its purest form. "Show me your combat techniques, human. Save my child, or face execution for practicing forbidden medicine." The Chancellor's private chambers had been transformed into an operating theater unlike any in human or Viridian history. Modified surgical equipment salvaged from the Hippocrates sat alongside repurposed Viridian crystal working tools. Light amplifiers created a sterile field around Lumina's deteriorating form. "Record everything." Chancellor Zenith instructed the 4 security crystals hovering at the corners of the room. As evidence, for justice or vindication. Chen studied the medical scans with growing concern. Lumina's central core crystal, the equivalent of both heart and brain, showed advanced fragmentation. Hairline fractures spread outward like a spiderweb, each one leaking the luminescent energy that gave Viridians their name and life force. "Chancellor, I must be clear," Chen said, meeting Zenith's faceted gaze. "What I'm proposing has never been attempted on a Viridian. I've modified human cardiac surgery techniques based on Kyle's research, but will it save my child?" Zenith interrupted, harmonic tones stripped of their usual formal resonance. "It might," Chen answered honestly, "or it might accelerate the fragmentation. The current path leads to certain dissolution," Zenith replied. "Proceed, Doctor." Chen nodded to Exile, who began administering the modified anesthetic, a frequency modulator that would temporarily suspend Lumina's conscious processes without disrupting core energy flow. Anesthetic effective. Exile reported as Lumina's surface illumination dimmed to a gentle pulse. Core vibration stable but weakening. Chen activated her specialized laser scalpel, designed for precise crystalline incisions without triggering the natural integration response. As she positioned it above Lumina's chest cavity, the security crystals moved closer, recording every movement. Beginning primary incision along the phase boundary, Chen narrated, aware that her technique would be studied by generations of Viridians regardless of the outcome. The scalpel hummed as it cut through the outer crystalline layer, creating a precise geometric pattern that allowed access while minimizing structural damage. Zenith emitted a high-frequency distress tone as the first layer of their child's body was breached, a sound that transcended species barriers in its anguish. Phase 1 complete, Chen announced, setting aside the scalpel, now accessing the secondary matrix. The inner crystal structures proved more challenging. When conventional tools failed to properly separate the fused segments, Chen was forced to improvise. "I need a precision resonator," she told Exile, who retrieved a mining tool from their emergency kit. "That's industrial equipment," Zenith objected, facets reorganizing in alarm. "It's what will save Lumina," Chen replied, calibrating the device. With precision born from years of emergency medicine, Chen applied the resonator to specific juncture points, causing controlled fractures that released pressure on the core while maintaining overall structural integrity. Each crack elicited gasps from the watching Viridians, for whom such actions resembled violence of the most intimate kind. When Chen finally accessed the central core, the urgency became clear. Lumina's core crystal was fragmenting rapidly, its luminescence flickering erratically. "Core destabilization," Kyle reported, the equivalent of cardiac arrest in humans. Energy patterns failing. Without hesitation, Chen retrieved a specially designed tool that resembled a crystalline tuning fork. With practiced precision, she struck the core crystal in a specific pattern, a Viridian version of defibrillation. "You're attacking the core," Zenith cried, lurching forward before security personnel restrained them. "I'm re-establishing resonance patterns," Chen corrected, striking again in a different position. Like jump-starting a heart. To everyone's amazement, Lumina's core began to pulse with renewed luminescence, its fracture patterns stabilizing. "Prepare the donor crystal," Chen instructed Exile, who produced a small, perfectly clear crystal sphere, harvested from Exile's own body, as a perfect genetic match. Using modified grafting techniques, Chen carefully integrated the donor crystal into Lumina's damaged core, creating a template for proper regeneration. As the new crystal merged with the old, healthy light began to flow through the fracture patterns, slowly replacing dullness with clarity. "Final integration should be completed by a Viridian hand," Chen said, stepping back. "Kyle, you've studied the technique. Complete the connection." Kyle's crystalline fingers trembled slightly as they applied the final resonance patterns, demonstrating that Viridians could master these techniques themselves. The donor crystal pulsed once, twice, then fully integrated, sending waves of luminescence throughout Lumina's body. "Core stabilizing," Kyle reported, hardly believing the readings. "Regeneration patterns re-establishing along proper matrices." Chancellor Zenith approached cautiously as Lumina's surface began to clear, dullness giving way to transparency beginning from the core and spreading outward. "What you've done," Zenith whispered, harmonics wavering between horror and gratitude, "is both terrible and miraculous." "That," Chen replied, removing her surgical gear, "is the essence of medicine." The recording of Lumina's surgery became the most watched broadcast in Viridian history. Opinion crystallized around two opposing interpretations, a barbaric desecration of sacred bodily autonomy, or a revolutionary approach to healing that challenged millennia of tradition. 3 weeks after the procedure, Chancellor Zenith stood before the High Council, Lumina beside them, fully recovered, their crystalline form clearer and more radiant than before. "I present Resolution 7 Gamma," Zenith announced, harmonic tones resonating through the chamber. "The establishment of the Viridian Human Medical Exchange." The council chamber erupted in discordant tones as traditionalists voiced opposition. "You propose institutionalizing violence against our bodies," Councillor Prism protested, facets reorganizing in the pattern of formal objection. "I propose survival," Zenith countered. "The dulling claims 12 more citizens daily. Our healing chambers remain quarantined. What alternatives would you suggest?" Silence answered the question. Dr. Chen stood beside Exile at the witness platform, aware that everything hinged on this moment. The temporary medical license granted to her after Lumina's recovery had allowed them to treat 37 critical cases, all successful, all controversial. "The human has earned the right to speak," Zenith declared, silencing further objections. Chen stepped forward, conscious of the surveillance crystals broadcasting her words across the planet. Your society faces a critical shortage of human doctors, she began. Even if every medical professional on Earth relocated here, we couldn't treat all affected Viridians. Instead, we propose training your people in adapted techniques while creating specialized tools that compensate for physiological differences. She activated a holographic display showing newly designed surgical implements, elegant crystalline instruments that channeled Viridian energy manipulation abilities while enabling precise physical interventions. These adaptive surgical tools accommodate your natural abilities, Chen explained. Where human hands evolved for physical manipulation, Viridian hands evolved for energy direction. These tools bridge that evolutionary gap. Exile demonstrated their elongated crystalline fingers interfacing perfectly with a prototype. The tool extended and transformed, becoming an extension of their body rather than a foreign object. We face another challenge, Chen continued. During a mass casualty event like the welcoming ceremony collapse, medical resources become limited. Humans developed a system called triage, prioritizing treatment based on survival probability. The concept sent harmonic ripples of distress through the council. The idea of choosing who received treatment first violated their egalitarian principles. You would have us decide whose life holds more value, Counselor Facet asked, voice sharp with crystalline indignation. I would have you save those who can be saved, Chen corrected. When resources are limited, treating those beyond help first means losing those who could have survived. The debate raged for hours, but ultimately pragmatism prevailed. With thousands already affected by the dulling, the council approved the medical exchange by a narrow margin. Within days, a former crystal cultivation center was converted into a teaching hospital. Human medical personnel arrived from the Hippocrates, working alongside Viridian volunteers to develop a new medical discipline. New terms entered the Viridian language: constructive damage, healing force, aggressive care, concepts previously unthinkable. Not everyone embraced change. Protests grew outside the facility, led by traditionalists who saw human methods as corruption of their peaceful nature. As Chen observed a Viridian student successfully perform their first procedure, Exile approached with troubling news. The research team has identified the cause of the dulling, they said quietly. You should see this immediately. In the research lab, holographic models displayed Viridian cellular structures alongside historical samples preserved from ancient times. Our perfect regeneration has become our downfall, Exile explained. Unlike humans, who evolved with cellular degradation and replacement cycles, our regeneration mechanism perfectly preserves every crystal formation, including damaged or radiation-affected ones. You keep replicating the damaged patterns, Chen realized. With each regeneration cycle, the corruption compounds until catastrophic failure. The cruel irony, Exile said, facets dim with emotion, is that our greatest strength created our greatest vulnerability, and only by adopting the methods of a species that evolved through violence and conflict can we survive. When these findings were published, Viridian society fractured further between those who saw adaptation as necessary evolution and purists who declared they would rather dissolve naturally than embrace combat healing. Chen watched the cultural upheaval with concern, knowing that the hardest battles still lay ahead. The graduation ceremony for the first class of Viridian surgeons transformed the grand crystalline auditorium into a symbol of cultural evolution. 37 Viridians had completed the accelerated medical program, each now wearing the modified surgical harnesses that augmented their natural abilities. Dr. Chen watched with pride from the stage as Chancellor Zenith addressed the gathering. 6 months of relentless work had yielded remarkable progress. Nearly 2,000 Viridians had received successful treatment for the dulling, and preliminary data suggested the condition had been contained in the capital region. Today marks not merely the certification of medical practitioners, Zenith's harmonics resonated through the chamber, but the emergence of a new understanding of preservation. Our ancestors believed perfect regeneration made us superior. We now understand that adaptation, even painful adaptation, ensures survival. In the audience, Kyle nodded in approval, their once dulled arm now clear again after undergoing the very procedures they had helped pioneer. Next to them sat Lumina, fully recovered and considering a future in medicine. Outside the auditorium, the societal fractures had only deepened. A faction calling themselves the Pure Forms had emerged, led by former council members who had resigned in protest. They rejected all human medical intervention, claiming it corrupted the very essence of Viridian identity. As Zenith prepared to present the graduates with their certification crystals, a high-pitched resonance cut through the ceremony. The same frequency Chen had heard during the welcoming spire collapse. Structural integrity compromised. Security forces broadcast throughout the auditorium. Evacuate immediately. Too late. The Pure Forms had activated crystal resonators calibrated to the exact frequency that would shatter the auditorium's support structures. With a deafening crack, the ceiling began to fracture. "Everyone out," Chen shouted, her combat medic instincts taking over. "Graduates, emergency protocols." As massive crystal shards rained down, the newly trained Viridian doctors immediately transitioned from graduates to emergency responders. Using their new skills and specialized equipment, they created treatment zones amid the chaos, applying triage principles to identify and assist the most critically injured. Chen worked alongside her former students, performing rapid assessments and interventions. A young Viridian with a completely shattered lower body was stabilized using crystalline compression techniques. An elder whose core energy was failing received emergency resonance therapy. "Dr. Chen," Tazile called out from across the chamber. "The eastern support column is failing." Chen looked up just as the massive crystal column fractured. She shoved two injured Viridians clear of the collapse zone, but couldn't move fast enough herself. Tons of crystalline debris crashed down, burying her beneath razor-sharp fragments. When Thiel and the security team excavated her minutes later, Chen's condition was dire. Multiple fractures, a severed femoral artery, and cascading internal trauma. Blood pooled beneath her broken body, its crimson starkness alien against the prismatic crystal floor. "Get her to the medical center," Kazile ordered. "Too far," one of the graduates assessed. "She'll exsanguinate before we arrive." Kazile made an instant decision. "Prepare for emergency vascular surgery. Here. Now." The graduates froze momentarily. They had trained for Viridian procedures, adapted from human techniques. None had performed actual surgery on a human. "She dies if we do nothing," Kazile reminded them, already activating their specialized surgical interface. Broadcast to emergency channels. All Viridians should witness this. As security crystals established the broadcast link, Kazile began to operate on their human mentor. Their crystalline hands, once incapable of the precision required for surgery, now moved with fluid grace augmented by the surgical interface. Each movement, cutting, clamping, cauterizing, was narrated for the watching population. "I sever damaged vessels to restore proper flow," Kazile explained, their voice steady despite the stress. "I cut to connect, break to rebuild, invade to preserve." Millions of Viridians watched as one of their own performed what would have once been considered acts of violence. But in context, with Chen's life hanging by a thread, the purpose behind each aggressive action became clear. "I am not attacking her body," Kazile declared as they repaired the severed artery. "I am defending her life." Across the city, even among Pure Form sympathizers, perception began to shift. The same techniques they had condemned as barbaric were saving the life of the human who had saved so many of their own. As Chen stabilized under Kazile's care, reports came in of Pure Form members actively preventing treatment of injured Viridians in the name of cultural purity. The contrast could not have been more stark or more damning. 1 year after the auditorium attack, the central plaza of Viridia Prime filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The establishment of the Interstellar Medical Corps, the first joint human-Viridian initiative, had drawn dignitaries from 17 species, all eager to witness this unprecedented alliance. Dr. Ilara Chen stood at attention beside Exile, her posture military straight, despite the crystalline exoskeleton that now replaced her shattered leg bones. The transparent lattice merged seamlessly with her flesh, a hybrid solution born from necessity when conventional human treatments failed. Beside her, Exile wore a modified surgical harness adorned with the new IMC insignia, a crystal hand and human hand joined in healing. The patient survived, High Chancellor Zenith announced to the assembled crowd, referencing Chen's near-fatal injuries. Both patients survived. The second patient Zenith referred to was Viridian Society itself. The attack that nearly killed Chen had marked the turning point in the cultural crisis. Footage of Exile performing emergency surgery on their human mentor had transformed the narrative overnight. The same pure forms who had orchestrated the collapse found themselves socially isolated when they prevented injured Viridians from receiving treatment. Within weeks, the movement had collapsed under the weight of public opinion. Their leadership now faced justice for the 14 deaths caused by their actions. Today, Zenith continued, we present the official medical report to the Galactic Confederation, formally requesting the addition of humanity as full members based on their vital contribution to Viridian survival. Chen stepped forward, still adjusting to the crystalline structures supporting her damaged leg. The integration of Viridian regenerative crystal with human bone had never been attempted before her injury. Now hundreds of patients on both sides benefited from the technique. The dulling has been officially contained, she reported to the assembly. The combined approach of preventative radiation shielding, modified human treatments, and new Viridian cellular regeneration techniques has halted the spread of the condition. She activated a holographic display showing the plummeting infection rates across all Viridian colonies. Periodic treatments will always be necessary for those already affected, Chen continued, but new generations will not face the same threat. More importantly, we've developed protocols that can be adapted for other species facing similar regenerative disorders. Heil stepped forward with a crystalline data module, the official report bearing the title that had once been used to condemn human practices. Their healing methods are combat techniques. The question mark had remained as a reminder of how perspective could transform understanding. This document is now required study at medical academies throughout the galaxy, Exile explained. Its conclusion represents not just Viridian opinion, but our formal scientific assessment. Exile's facets shimmered with pride as they read the final passage. We misunderstood humanity's fundamental nature. What appeared as violence was in fact the most profound expression of their commitment to life. They fight not against patients, but against death itself. They battle disease with the ferocity of predators. They combat injury with the strategic brilliance of warriors. And they have taught us that true peace is not passive acceptance of natural outcomes, but the active, sometimes aggressive defense of life against all threats. The human gift to the stars is not their technology, but their refusal to surrender to the inevitable. The human delegation received a standing ovation, a gesture adopted from Earth protocols that had found favor among the Viridians. As the ceremony concluded, emergency comms activated throughout the plaza. A distant mining colony reported a catastrophic structural collapse with hundreds injured. Chen and Exile exchanged knowing looks, their hands moving simultaneously to the medical combat kits they both carried. Without a word, they headed toward the emergency transporters, followed by a mixed team of human and Viridian medical personnel. Triage protocols, a young Viridian medic asked as they boarded. Full deployment, Chen confirmed. Trauma Team Alpha to structural injuries, Beta to crystalline core failures. Combat medicine at its finest, Exile added, activating their surgical interface. As the transporter engaged, Chen reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a cultural misunderstanding now represented a new form of interspecies cooperation. Viridian precision, and human intensity, once incompatible approaches, now formed a healing methodology that neither species could have achieved alone. They had learned to fight death together, and they were winning.